and hit record. All right, so there we are recording it. So Francisco, if you forgot your headphones, mic I think doesn't work on computers. Okay, so Francisco, what we'll do then is we will, like I said, I'm recording this, so you should be able to watch it later, maybe once you get home or off of your computer. So let me see. But you can still hear me, right, Francisco? Okay, perfect. Then at least you can hear me and you can chat. So as long as everybody can at least hear me and can use the chat function, then I'm pretty happy with that, okay? So let me make sure I got everybody that's here. Make sure. All right, sounds good. I think I got everybody that's here checked in, so we should be good to go. All right, so let's go ahead and start with chapter 1, orientation to higher ed. I'll be honest, I was out sick yesterday, and so I spent some of my day looking at this chapter a little bit more closely. And really what this chapter is looking at is the culture of higher ed. Okay, awesome, Emma. So the culture of higher ed is a little bit different, as you know, than the culture of what you would have in a high school or anything K through 12. We are expecting a little bit different with regard to your schedule and juggling of time management, things of that nature. So it's a little bit different. And so this chapter is really just to kind of orient you to make sure that you know those terms. And granted, some of this is going to be probably very redundant for you. And again, if you read the chapter, great. If you skimmed through the chapter, great. If you didn't read the chapter, then we're going to kind of go through it right now because at the end of the semester we will have a final exam of sorts. It's not going to be a formal final exam, but there will be some information from this chapter and all the chapters on that. So when you're looking at this, of course, we're going through it step by step, the structure of higher education. As a lot of you probably already know, higher ed comes in various forms. You guys are currently at the community college, which is traditionally a 2-year institution in North Carolina. However, if you go to other institutions in other states, they have a much different structure. In Florida, you can have a community college and a university in the same institution, and they award 2-year and 4-year degrees. Of course, you know, how those degrees transfer across state lines is a little bit different based on the state and the university and what they're willing to give. But a lot of students nowadays are starting at the 2-year university, and I think that's a great opportunity because one, it's going to save you money. And you're still going to get this very similar instruction. So whenever you're looking at the cost of attendance, I'm definitely going to be looking at this for my 12-year-old. I think he needs to go to the 2-year institution depending on his major, at least for the first 2 years, possibly even doing dual enrollment, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Of course, once you go through the community college, then you get to the university like we have here at Appalachia. And as you know, we have, it says 15 in this book, but really there's 16. Because I don't think that they have, I think they're missing one institution because there's supposed to be 16 UNC institutions. Okay, thank you, Francisco. I'll get Jacob on there also. I see that because there's supposed to be 16. And then you also have the School of Science and Math, which makes a 17th institution. So, but then you also have public universities, colleges, and community colleges. So we have the 16 UNC system schools, 58 community colleges, and then all of the private institutions that we have. And it says there's 36 of these in North Carolina. So whenever you look at North Carolina in general, then you see that it's a huge institutional state. We have a ton of higher ed in the state, and students are going all over, and they're transferring all over. Whenever we look at transfer students from community colleges to UNC system schools, we see that on average, most schools have about a third to UNC Charlotte has just over half of their students are transfer students, so they're definitely doing that commuting. Another thing that we're seeing with transfer students is they're doing a lot of shopping around. Now, I know that you guys aren't necessarily doing that because a lot of you have already figured out exactly where you're going to go with regard to either that being Appalachian, or some of you have said ECU. There's one student wanting to go to Duke. So I mean, it kind of just depends on where you're going to go as to what that transfer institution's population looks like. Again, Appalachian is about a third. We have about 33% of our students are transfer students, and we usually bring in about 1,300 transfer students each fall, and somewhere around 300 to 400 in the spring. So whenever you think about that, we've talked about that before. What does that transfer look like whenever you are talking about the various institutions? And then whenever you're looking at the various institutions, whether it be the 2-year school or the 4-year school, then of course you have different degrees that are awarded. Of course, at the community college, you get the associate's degree, but it's very important that you understand that there's different types of associate degrees and that you define your associate's degree appropriately. So at the community college, you can get an AA, an associate in arts, or an AS, associate in science, and those are both transfer degrees. So what that means is that those degrees, when you complete them with grades of C or better, are guaranteed to transfer to any of the UNC system institutions and meet their general education requirements. And that's a big deal because most of the UNC sister institutions, including Appalachian, has about 40 to 45 hours of just liberal arts coursework. We'll get more in depth as to what that looks like, but here at Appalachian, that requires you to have like 2 Englishes, a 4-hour math, 2 8-hour lab sciences, and then 21 hours of humanities, fine arts, social sciences, and literary studies. Also, we require a wellness requirement. But again, if you meet that, if you get the associate's degree in either arts or science, the AA or AS, then that transfers to meet all those lower level general education requirements, and then you're ready to go right into your major. But then there's also the AAS degree and the AFA degrees at the community colleges. So the AAS is an associate in applied science, and that's for somebody, excuse me, who's going to something like you might be getting in business administration or criminal justice, accounting. But then we also have the AFA, which is the associate in fine arts. And the associate in fine arts is for somebody who's going to be going into like theater or visual arts, things of that nature. Now, the AAS and the AFA do not transfer seamlessly. We do not accept those as a whole to meet general education requirements. So basically, we pull credit out of those degrees and we apply it where we can, and then students generally still have to meet general ed as they're working towards their bachelor's degree. So once they finish at the community college with the AAAS, AAS, or AFA, then they can move on to the university, and that's where you get an undergraduate bachelor's degree. Sometimes I feel like students have a little bit of confusion as to exactly what they're getting at each institution. So undergraduate bachelor's degree, it's traditionally a 4 to 5 year degree if you're starting fresh here at the university. If you're transferring in, depending on the major, it may be another 2 to 3 years. Okay, thanks, Rosie. So from there, from the 4-year degree, let me write down Cole's name. So from the 4-year degree, you can either get a BA or a BS, a Bachelor's of Arts or a Bachelor's of Science. Really, the only difference in this, as far as Appalachian goes, is with the BA, you have to take a foreign language, and then you're also required to have a minor, and it's more liberal arts than it is social sciences. So with the Bachelor of Science, you're going to get more social sciences, more natural sciences, things of that nature. But one thing to keep in mind is that whenever you are getting an associate's degree, just because you're going to be getting a Bachelor of Science does not necessarily mean you need a associate in science. So whenever you look back at those transfer guides that we talked about earlier, we recommend which one you can get. It also kind of depends on your community college as to how those degrees are laid out, the AA or the AS. But with Caldwell, it's based on our comprehensive articulation agreement, which we'll talk about a little bit more as we go through these various chapters. So from a bachelor's degree, then you can get a master's degree. A master's degree is traditionally 2 to 3 years, depending on the degree. A lot of institutions have what's called accelerated admissions. And so this means that you can start working on your master's degree, depending on the program, while you are still finishing up your bachelor's degree. So here at Appalachian, I think we have like 21 different programs. So your senior year, or actually the end of your junior year, then you apply, and then your senior year, while you're finishing up your coursework, your undergraduate coursework, you go ahead and start taking master's coursework that kind of double dips and applies to both. So it allows you to accelerate your time to degree completion with regard to the master's degree. So if that's something that anybody is wanting to do as far as that goes, as far as master's, then we need to start looking at that to kind of see what programs your institution's offering. So that's something we can look at as we go through your map a little bit later. And then for master's degrees, you can get your doctoral degree. The doctoral degrees come in all different fields depending on where you're going. You can get a PhD, or you can get an MD, or you can get an ED. There's all different types. You can also get your Juris Doctorate. So there's different types, and if you want to go that far, then we can talk about that on a one-on-one basis. As you all know, I have my undergraduate degree, which is a Bachelor's of Science in Sociology, and then I also have a master's degree, a Master's of Science, which is in school counseling, and then I have an educational doctoral of science, which is actually kind of like the associate's degree of EDD. So I have 30 hours completed. So I have an EDS, 30 hours of an EDD completed. So the EDD would be the final terminal degree. So an EDD, a PhD, anything like that is also called a terminal degree. Any questions about any of that? That's kind of gets confusing whenever you start talking about it and thinking about that hierarchy of things. And I didn't make y'all a PowerPoint because I thought that would be a little bit boring and figured we could just go through this and hopefully nobody's falling asleep on me. Hold on just a minute. I got a message from Josh. Okay, I'll deal with that in a minute. So that's kind of the hierarchy of how that goes, is you go to the associate's degree, depending on your major, the bachelor's degree, the master's degree, and the doctorate. Now, there's only like 3% of the population that even has a doctorate degree, so it's not something that a lot of people strive for. It's really not something that you're going to need unless you're going to be teaching at the university level, or you're going to go into a field that really requires it, such as medicine, something like that. But if you're planning on doing something in business, the most you might get is an MBA, Master's of Business Association, or Administration, excuse me, and that can usually take you a year. I think the program here at Appalachian is a year plus a summer semester, so it's basically like 3 semesters. Whenever you're thinking about a master's degree, it's traditionally less than 12 hours. Lee, so are you Dr. Watts? Technically, yes, I am Dr. Watts because I have an EDS, but I don't have the EDD. So yes, Lee. But I don't really go by that because that sounds a little bit too uppity. So I usually just go by Beth. Y'all know that. So anyway, if you're going to go into like business or something like that, you might get a master's degree. But if you're going to go into like nutrition, then you can be like a certified dietitian and not need to go any farther and still make a good living. All right, so any questions? All right, so let's move on to community college students and what that kind of looks like. Well, and this varies based on your community college. I've been to some community colleges where they have a high number of non-traditional students. By non-traditional students, I mean students that are traditionally in their mid to late 20s, have families or are starting a family. And then when you look at an institution such as Caldwell, especially there on the Watauga campus, and you tend to have students that are more in the age range of 18 to 21. And that's just based on demographics. A lot of Caldwell students are planning to come to Appalachian, and so they go ahead and start at Caldwell as a first choice. A lot of students also coming out of Watauga High School do dual enrollment, and so that's called Career and College Promise. And that allows students who are still in high school to take college courses for free. They still have to pay for their books, but then they can also get college and high school credit for it. So it's kind of a weird situation whenever I started reading this, and they said that the average age of a community college student is 28. That's a little bit older than what I'm used to seeing in North Carolina. Most of the time, a lot of the community colleges are somewhere between like 20 to 25. And I think 25 is pushing it a little bit, especially whenever you're looking at schools like that are feeder schools right into other institutions. So like if you look at Wake Tech, their demographics are going to be a little bit more on the younger side because they're feeding right into NC State. But then again, you also have that's kind of skewed also when you look at career and college promise, because you might have kids that are 16 years old in your classes and you don't even know it. We don't identify them. I don't know who's career and college promise and who's a traditional college student. We're treating everybody the same. So whenever you're looking at that, a lot of these students do receive financial aid. I think, I know here at Appalachian, 70% of our student population receives financial aid. So if you think of a third of our students are also coming from a community college, then about a third of that 70% are probably receiving financial aid. And when you look at financial aid coming from a community college to a university, it is very different because obviously a university costs more money. And when my husband Skip comes in and talks about CFNC, he'll talk a little bit about this. But if any of you are receiving a Pell Grant, the Pell Grant is probably covering all of your current tuition costs. But whenever you get to your next institution, if you're transferring, then that Pell Grant's only going to cover a portion of that cost. And then you're either going to have to backfill with out-of-pocket grants and scholarships if you apply for those, or federal loans. And so that's kind of getting more into the weeds and what we need to get at here. But just know that, yes, you can get aid. It's just going to be a little bit more expensive. And of course, you have to qualify for it through the FAFSA. All right, so let's move on to course types, because there are a couple different course types that we need to talk about. What we're doing right now are curriculum courses. All of you are in curriculum courses if you're doing the transfer path, which you should be doing since you're in ACA 122, and these are all counting for credit. So keep in mind, again, whenever we talked about what different institutions wanted with regard to transfer admissions and transfer credit. So we're looking at curriculum courses traditionally for transfer credit. Most institutions, unless it's a specific, very, very specific program, do not take continuing ed courses. And so continuing education courses would be those courses that, like, I might be willing to take about gardening, or I know Paulo used to offer like a beehive, a beekeeper's thing. So that would be more continuing education. And so it's also looking at those courses that are in the AAS or the AFA. So these are going to be courses that we may not take just because they don't transfer. And whenever you get into some of those more specific and less general courses, especially whenever you're looking at those various majors, the institutions want you to take those classes here. So when we get into your college map, it's going to be very important that we talk about that in depth and make sure that all the courses that you're taking are going to transfer in the way that you need them to transfer so that you're not wasting credit. Of course, and then they have the college and career readiness course, and that's getting your GED or your high school equivalency, and then the English as a second language courses. And so a community college really really caters to a variety of students. I think you guys are kind of in this bubble living here in Boone and in Watauga County, because it is the demographic of students at Watauga campus is very homogeneous compared to those that would be at another institution or even at like the parent campus of Caldwell, just because the demographics here in Watauga County aren't quite as diverse as they may be in other areas. And I think we can see that just in looking at the student demographics that we have. But again, a lot of that goes back to the fact that we have a lot of students that come out of Watauga High School that feed in. We also have a lot of students that come in just to go to Caldwell so that they can get into Appalachian. And so we are definitely looking at a very specific type of culture here at Appalachian and what the students look like. We can see that we have students here that tend to be more outdoorsy. They tend to have similar interests, things of that nature, whereas, of course, if you go to NC State or something like that, that culture is going to look a little bit different. So just something to know is that there are different courses. What I need you to know is that you guys are in curriculum courses and you need to be taking curriculum courses that will transfer to the institution you're going to go to. All right. And then we look at the expectations of college students. And as anybody got any questions? Is everybody still with me? Just give me like a little yes, we're here on this chat so that I know y'all are all still with me. Sweet. Awesome. Y'all are fabulous. Sorry, my voice is going. As you can tell, it's getting there. So anyway, let's talk about expectations of college students. And we've kind of gone over this a little bit, but I do want to get a little bit more in depth. Because one thing that we see, and I see a lot, is that coming from a community college, sometimes students get their hand held. And by that, I mean that the advisor or their instructor does a lot more for them than we would do here at the university. And that's due to class size. I have 24 of you guys that I can work with, but I only have one class. And so whenever you look at the class size of the community college, they tend to be a little bit smaller. Those instructors maybe only have 4 or 5 courses that they're working with. And then once we get here to the university, we're looking on a much, much larger scale. A lot of our instructors are teaching 7 and 8 sections. Granted, we have small class sizes, but depending on the class size that you're going to be in, if you're going to be taking a general ed biology class and it's 150 people deep in one lecture hall, then that's going to be a little bit different than taking biology with Eric Smith at Caldwell, whenever you may only have 30 students and you can get a little bit more one-on-one instruction. And so we really want you to have some self-directedness. We want you to be able to ask questions for yourself. One thing that I see a lot of is I have a lot of parents that call me for their students in community college, 23, 24 years old, and they can't figure out how to have time management to give me a call. And so their parents are calling us, and so that's not really very beneficial. So if any of your parents call me, just don't tell them to tell me your name, okay? Because I don't want any of your parents calling me, asking me questions. I want you guys to call me and ask me those questions, or send me an email, or meet with me, as some of you have already done. So we wanted you to be self-directed, and that's self-directed in how you interact with your instructors, how you interact with your peers, and also how you direct yourself with regard to getting your coursework done. As you know, whenever you're even at the community college, people aren't going to run behind you and say, hey, did you get this done? Now, the community college may be a little bit more lenient in letting you turn something in late. The community college is trying to kind of help set you up so you are successful at the university. But one thing that we are not going to do here at the university is run after you and say, hey, did you get this in? This is your responsibility, and we're not going to take it late. So keep that in mind. So you need to have that ability to have time management and also organization and responsibility of yourself, because we aren't going to do it for you. And this is also a great learning lesson in the instance of once you get to the real world as working full-time, family, all of that, and then it's all on your shoulders. So it's kind of helping you prepare for the life challenges that are ahead. This is a conversation I have with my son a lot, because he's always like, well, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to learn this now? Well, it's so that we can prepare you later on, because I'm not going to be the parent that holds his hand, even though I'm sure that he would love that. So whenever you think about kind of what that looks like, it means going ahead and asking those questions now, going ahead and having the self-motivation to say, okay, I need to figure this out right now, and then work through it through there. Like I said, some of you guys have already come to me and asked me some questions about what your next steps would be. I know I've got a few appointments with some of you coming up, just to kind of work through what next steps are going to look like for you. And I think that's a very good thing to go ahead and start doing. You may not be transferring 2 years, but when we're making that college map, you're going to see how important it is that you go ahead and have a plan. I'm not a big planner person. I tend to go do things, kind of fly by night by the seat of my pants. But one thing I will say is whenever you're looking at your education and planning the next steps, this is something that you very much need to be planful on. I wasn't as planful as I needed to be whenever I was in college, and so my financial aid's pretty high, my student debt's pretty high, and I switched my major, like I told you, I think 4 or 5 times, because I didn't have a plan. But I didn't have anybody to help me make a plan either. So that's one of the great things about this class, is that we're going to be able to get you your plan so that you can follow that plan and move on. All right. We're not going to go over Bloom's taxonomy. That's not something I feel like y'all really need to know about. Academic integrity, we kind of talked about that. Don't plagiarize. You have to cite everything if you don't know how to cite something. And this is going to be really important whenever you get to the university, because I have had friends who have gotten in trouble for plagiarism, unintentional plagiarism. They didn't really realize that they were plagiarizing because they summarized, but they didn't cite the summary. So that's very much something that you have to be aware of, is that whenever you're writing something out, even if you're summarizing it, you still need to cite where you got that information from. You can cite in MLA or APA. If you don't know what those are, then you can go on Purdue OWL, and you can just www.purdueowl.com, I think is what it is, and that'll give you a lot of the citation notations for APA and MLA as up to date as they are. Now keep in mind that's not 100% foolproof. I use that as part of my dissertation, and I did have some mistakes on it. So make sure that you are also using Martin or the Writing Center whenever you are writing papers, especially whenever you get into some of those more in-depth literature reviews, things of that nature once you get here to the university. So plagiarism is a big one. Of course, you don't want to use somebody else's work. If you're in math class, don't copy, right? This isn't high school. You will get in a lot more trouble. I have seen students that have gotten kicked out of school for continued cheating and plagiarism. So that's very, very big whenever you sign in, saying you're going to be a student at an institution, you are saying that you will be integral with your academic career. Okay, and finally, we're looking at transcripts. Transcripts are a big one because this is how we as an institution know what you did at your previous institution. We see transcripts come through our office every single day. Kids who are taking classes, whether they're taking classes at another institution while they're a current student, whether they're transferring in, whether they even just want us to do a preliminary review to see how their courses will transfer. I look at transcripts every single day. And we also get students that have tried to falsify their transcripts. We've had students that have tried to white out the minus on the C because they wanted it to transfer. That is grounds for us to press charges because it is flagrant. Sorry, y'all, my brain's not working well this morning. But it's falsifying your information. So one thing to keep in mind with transcripts is whenever you do apply to an institution, we have to have all of your college transcripts. Now, if you have been to another institution, we still have to see those transcripts. We cannot take information off of, if you let's say you went to Nash Community College and you transferred to Caldwell, so you get into Appalachian, we're going to need both the Nash and the Caldwell Community College. We can't take the Nash coursework off of the Caldwell Community College because we have to see what that looks like. Another thing to think about is AP scores. If you took any AP classes whenever you were in high school, then we will need those AP scores. We cannot take them off of your high school transcript. They're not even listed on your high school transcript anymore. So if you did anything like that, then we need those test scores. As of right now, with AP scores, every institution has to take a 3 or better, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you get equivalent credit. That may just be elective credit, because institutions can decide how they take those scores. We can also take CLEP scores, AB, IB, Cambridge. If you don't know what those are, then don't worry about it. If you do know what those are and you need to talk about it, then we can definitely talk about it. But transcripts are going to be very, very important. They're basically your report card. So keep in mind that's how we're going to judge you whether to deem you academically satisfying for admission into the university. All right, Rosie, let's see what you said. For app, do you need to turn in AP test scores? Yes, for us, you will need to turn in your AP test scores. So you don't have to necessarily pay for the College Board official report. You can go on to College Board and there's a printable, downloadable version that you can just print off and send to us. You can either print it off and fax it, you can print it off and bring it in, or you can email it to us. But we definitely have to have that, and it has to have your name. I think it's your student ID or date of birth. I don't exactly remember, but it definitely has to have your name showing on that. So yes, we will need your AP test scores. Okay. So again, orientation to higher ed. It's really just an overview. I hope y'all didn't spend much time reading that chapter. It was just an overview of what it is to mean to be in a higher education setting, whether it's there at the community college, here at the institution, four-year university, or even farther on. I will say a lot of students go to the community college and they get their finish their 2 years, 2 to 3 years here at the university, and then a lot of times they go on to a master's degree at another institution so you can have another cultural experience. Because keep in mind, part of being in college is also that cultural experience of learning who you are, finding out what it is that you really enjoy in life, where you want to be. it's not all about going to classes. We want you to go to class and get an education, but it's also about balance. So we'll talk about time management because all fun and no play is no fun at all. So we need to kind of keep that in mind as far as what that's going to look like, so that you're not super stressed out. Another thing that we're seeing is that students are getting so stressed out with school that they're also having mental health issues, or if they also have some maybe minor mental health issues, they're getting exasperated from the stress that they're putting on themselves trying to work and go to school. So you have to have realistic expectations of what it is that you are able to do um, in a 24-hour period, because that's all the time you got, and you got to sleep and you got to eat, and it can't be all go 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 go, because that's not where we need to be. So what questions do you guys have about what it means to go to a community college or go to a university, or that transferring a credit? Any questions about that? I'll give y'all a minute to type if you need to type anything. All right, okay. So one thing I would like for you guys to do is, I don't want you to do an assignment or anything like that. But whenever you get an opportunity, if you have the book, just kind of look over that page 19, 20, and 21. And just, ask some good questions like, one of them is pretend you're a potential future employer. What questions do you have for a student based on the sample transcript that they gave? And the sample transcript has the first semester is an F, a D, a withdrawal. The second semester is an A, B, B, B. So if I was looking at the student's transcript, I would kind of have to be like, so what happened your first semester? And then that would be a good opportunity to talk about growth as a potential employee. Well, I had kind of a rough time getting acclimated, but then I came back and was able to pick myself up and make things happen. So just kind of look at those and kind of think about what these answers might look like, because there's going to be something similar to this on the final exam whenever we do that. And again, the final exam will be an in-class assignment that we're going to do as a class. And so it's not going to be something that you're going to have to study for, but just something that you're going to have to be kind of familiar with. So make sure that you're kind of looking over those at the end of the chapter. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the college experience. And so again, what courses are we talking about, or what resources do you have? What activities and services do you need to be getting involved with? Various types of models, hybrid courses. So make sure you're looking over that, but definitely about the syllabus part of it. And then we'll also be talking a little bit more about Title IX. Like I said, I've been sick the last few days, and so I did not get that information put up. So we will get through Chapter 2, and then we will get through the information on Title IX after the fact. So at this point, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to stay and ask these questions. Will our class be here on Thursday? Yes, our class will be here on Thursday. So Thursday we will be Zooming in again. Again, if you have any issues, I got one from Josh Yeager, and I'm going to have to respond to him in that one and see what we can do there. If you have any issues, let me know. I will be working here out of my office at ASU. Again, you can call me, you can email me, but we will be working out of here at this time. And then I think next week, we're talking about the personal narrative and starting the Google Sites, and I think Skip comes next week also to talk to y'all a little bit more about CFNC and doing that type of thing. So we'll get through this slowly but surely. That may be 2 weeks away, but either way, we'll see you here on Thursday. And again, if you have any questions, just let me know, okay? All right. And so you guys can log out whenever you're done. And if you have any questions and you want to stay on here and talk to me about it, then you're more than welcome to. Rosie, did you have some questions that you wanted to talk to me about after the fact? Okay. All right. All right. Then I'll look at my email and then we'll go from there. Okay, Rosie? All right. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone, for being here.